Good evening, Los Altos. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight for the Los Altos City Council Candidates Forum. This is a program that's been going on in Los Altos in person and virtually since 2010. I'm Mike Kasperzak. I'm a former mayor of Mountain View, California, and I am your unbiased moderator this evening. I would like to just, again, welcome all of you here. I've done this twice before. Both were virtual, so it's really great to be here in person. And I know some of the incumbents have had the same thing to say, to be in person and here. So we'll get on with the introductions. And in addition to our professional editors this evening, we have some our most insightful questions usually come from our student editors and in our community, and we welcome their participation again this year. So the editors this evening are, we've got Bruce Barton, everybody knows from the Los Altos Town Crier, editor-in-chief. Milan Grubovich, I've been working that one all night, Los Altos High School Talon editor-in-chief. Dory Shee, also from the Los Altos High School Talon. She's from the print managing editor. From Mountain View High School, we have Carter Nishi, the Oracle editor-in-chief, and Maisha Fukan, the Mountain View Oracle editor. I guess you guys are co-editors-in-chief.
Yes.
So let's give them a big round of applause. We'd also like to thank our 13 sponsors who make the Candidates Forum possible. And we have American Association of University Women, Silicon Valley, the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, GreenTown Los Altos, KMVT 15 Community Media, Los Altos Affordable Housing Alliance, Los Altos Chamber of Commerce, Los Altos Community Coalition, Los Altos Forward, the Los Altos High School Talon, Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation, Los Altos Town Crier, Los Altos Women's Caucus, and Mountain View High School Oracle. And let's give all of our sponsors another round of applause. And perhaps all of you watching virtually, I don't know if you have the ability to do little clappies or anything on your screens, but you can go ahead and do that so you feel like you're part of the crowd here. I'd like to go over the ground rules that have been established for this forum. The podium order and candidate response order were randomly selected. The candidates will have a fixed amount of time to answer questions, which will be enforced by our timer. Actually, he is the timer, Gary Hedden, and I will be thanking members for their addresses when their time is up. And the expectation is that they will stop even if mid-sentence. So, interviewers can ask for follow-up questions, and candidates will have 1 additional minute to respond. Please, no interruptions from the audience or the candidates. We want to hold these debates to a higher standard. And as we say over at the Bus Barn Theater, there will be no intermission tonight. So, just a couple of other things. Each of the interviewers and our sponsors submitted prioritized questions for the candidates, and that's where all of the candidates the questions have come from. And given the limited time available, and we are going to stick within our time frame, we may not get to all of the questions, but we will do our best. And one other thing for all of you here, we're going to do something a little new this year. And it's going to be a little more audience participation and get you into it, since we're not going to do a Q&A period. We're calling this Los Altos Buzzword Bingo, and it is not a drinking game. Our volunteers are handing out bingo cards and markers for each member of the audience. 1 card per person, please. Now, during the program and during the candidates' comments, If someone uses one of the buzzwords that are on your card, you should mark it off, just like you would in regular bingo. And if you get 5 buzzwords in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, what are you going to say? Bingo! Shout it out. We will stop momentarily, even if it's mid-speech. The speaker will get additional time for just the recognition of the bingo winner. The bingo winner will be invited to come up at the end of the show and take a picture with the candidates. And candidates and editors, or just candidates, I don't know. We'll figure that out. So let's get started. We're going to begin with candidate introductions, and they will be in alphabetical order, and they will be limited to 90 seconds. Now, you will notice that one candidate is not with us tonight. Sally Meadows is absent and provided the following message. I'm sorry to miss the Los Altos City Council Candidates Forum. I was looking forward to participating, and I wouldn't miss it except for extraordinary circumstances. I have a severe case of sciatica, and am receiving medical care to help me move forward toward a complete recovery, but I am unable to participate tonight. I appreciate all the work the organizers have done to inform our community about their choices this election season. For tonight's forum, Sally's participation will be limited to a brief intro she had previously taped with KMVT. So let's get started, again, in alphabetical order, and we will start with Ibrahim. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Mike. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. So my name's Ibrahim Bashir. I've been a resident of Los Altos for nearly a decade. Gary shaved off 30 seconds of my time. No, like I said, I've been a resident for nearly a decade. This is the only place I've ever had a home, that I've ever actually owned a home, had a yard. I have immense love and faith in this town. I think it's an amazing place to raise a family and to build a future. It's where my wife and I actually decided to raise our 3 kids. It was a very intentional choice for us to move here about a decade ago. And I've tried to be a part of the fabric of this community in every which way as a volunteer. My kids go to Covington Elementary. I've been on the technology committee there. I've coached track at Los Altos School District Junior Olympics. I've been on the Library Commission. I was actually the chair of the Library Commission a number of years ago. And I think I've exhausted all the volunteering capacities that a person can do. And I think it's time for me to actually put my foot forward and go for a more official role of sort of running the city. And that's why I'm interested in doing that. Like I said, it's been a decade of me sort of being part of the fabric of the community. And I think there's a lot more we can do in terms of bringing diversity of experience, common sense leadership, and creativity to solving some of the problems we're facing over the next decade. And I hope my experience from business and tech is something I can apply and do that going forward.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Are you set for the next one, Gary?
I can do 30 and 60.
Okay, that'll work. Next up, Larry Lang, you have 90 seconds.
Or 30 plus 60.
Or 30 plus 60.
I can do that. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody out there. And Sally, hope your sciatica is improving. Thank you for joining us. You can read my bio on my website and so forth. I thought I'd share a little bit about what prompted me to get involved in this way. I had sold a tech company and found myself with a lot more time, and I think that's an important part of this. When I spoke with various people who've done this work, they talk about spending 20 to 30 hours a week to do it properly, because it's not just the meetings, it's listening to people, it's learning what's going on out there, hearing all the different sides of it. And also, I'll tell you, I was a little discouraged about the national kind of discourse, and I read this quote. It was from Democracy of America in 1820, from Tocqueville. Local assemblies of citizens constitute the strength of free nations. Town meetings are to liberty what primary schools are to science. They bring it within people's reach. They teach people how to use it and how to enjoy it. And I thought, I gotta try. So that is kind of a bit about why. I also want to just say something about the folks here that's very different from national. I've really enjoyed getting to know all of them better. We're going through this journey together. I'm sure that all 5 of us, whatever the citizens decide to do, will stay involved in the city, will continue working on the city, and it's just been a great privilege getting to know them better and going through this process with them.
Thank you. Let's lower the lights.
I'm Sally Meadows. I'm running for re-election to the Los Altos City Council. I'm running as an incumbent, but even more so as a community volunteer. I've spent the past 15 years dedicated to supporting our community in volunteer and board leadership roles, including on El Camino Healthcare's Community Advisory Council, 2 city commissions, the nonprofit Mentor Tutor Connection, and Los Altos Rotary Club. I was elected to City Council in 2020 and was mayor last year. Serving on City Council is an extension of my community service. I am running for re-election to build on the accomplishments of the last 4 years and to promote collaborative governance to meet our goals. We achieved a balanced budget, reduced legal expenses, improved public safety, for example, implemented automatic license plate readers, and invested in our Emergency Operations Center. Our housing element was certified by the state, and we aligned around clear, consistent budget priorities. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and am confident that we can preserve our beautiful, diverse city even as we grow and change. You will see on my website, sallyforlosaltos.com, the broad support I have within our community and from regional leaders, many of whom I've worked with on boards and other organizations. I am especially proud to have the endorsement of our esteemed Congresswoman, Anna Eshoo. I have proven through my decisions and actions these past 4 years that I am a forward-looking and empathetic leader. I am committed to listening respectfully, keeping an open mind, and continuing to work together to keep Los Altos a vibrant, safe, and inclusive community for all of us. I would be honored to represent Los Altos for another 4 years, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Eric, you're up next.
Oh, that's right. I do come before you.
That's weird, but that's what it says in the script.
I believe you. I believe you. Gary, are we ready? We are ready. I'm Eric Steinle, and I am currently the chair of the Planning Commission for another 3 weeks. And thanks to the malpractice of the City Council, I've been reappointed for another 4 years on the Planning Commission as of last night. And that has been my passion. I became involved in 2008 because of a development that was happening 20 feet outside my window, and got hooked. And thanks to this lady over here, in 2009, I started going to meetings. I go to all of the City Council meetings. I'm there at the beginning, and I'm there until the very end, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And she got me on to introduce me to somebody who got me to apply for the Library Commission, and I was then placed on the Library Commission in 2019, and in 2020 I got to be on the Planning Commission, which was what I really wanted to do. And so I've been involved in the development of the objective standards for multifamily and single-family residences, also the housing element update, also updating all of our code, etc. And that, to me, actually is what I'm passionate about, that and solving problems. I want to find Los Altos solutions for Los Altos problems, and that's what I'm looking at here. Going from the Planning Commission to the City Council is a step in that direction. It gives me an opportunity to do things that I can't do as a commissioner, and I'd like that opportunity. Are we there? That's it? Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
I did finish the sentence.
Jonathan?
Thank you. Hello and good evening. Before I begin my introductory remarks, I would like to thank the Community Coalition very much for all the work that you did in making tonight this forum happen. Thank you to Mike Kasperzak, who's serving as our moderator tonight. And thank you very much to the 5 journalists who are going to be asking questions. I know it's a lot of work for all of you, and we all really appreciate it. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jonathan Weinberg, and I have the honor of serving as the mayor of Los Altos this year. I ran for a seat in 2020, 4 years ago, and let me say that it has been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve on council as your representative. When I first ran, I promised 3 things. I promised to straighten out our city budget. I promised to extricate the city from lawsuits that were costing taxpayers millions of dollars, and to adopt sensible and sustainable policies that protect our natural beauty. Working collaboratively with the residents and with my colleagues on the City Council, I've kept my promises and accomplished much more. I'm looking forward tonight to highlight some of the changes and benefits that I've helped bring to our community, including a plan to develop more affordable housing in Los Altos, policies designed to make Los Altos carbon neutral by 2035, and I'm delighted to report that as mayor this year, we passed a balanced budget on time, and we're projecting a $3 million surplus. I love this community. It's really been a delight to represent you for the last 4 years, and I truly ask for your opinion, for your support and your vote so I can do it for another 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, moving on to the next section of the forum, we're going to do a warm-up, but it's not of the candidates. We're going to engage all of you, and we're going to let the candidates know who their audience is. So I've got a series of questions, we're going to go through quickly. Raise your hand if it's appropriate. First question, do you have school-aged children going to school in Los Altos? Yes, raise your hand. Okay, hands down. Next question, do you think traffic safety is a major issue for your family? Okay. Next, did you attend a city council meeting in the last year? Whoa, way better than Mountain View. All right.
It's just everybody.
Next one is, should the city rethink its approach to policing? Thank you. Have you resided in Los Altos for 10 years or more? Woo. Next one, do you own a residence in Los Altos? You can probably guess what the next one is. Do you rent in Los Altos? All right. And lastly, do you enjoy outdoor dining downtown? That's your audience, gentlemen. All right. Thank you all for your participation. We have a series of 4 questions in our first round of questions from the editors, and the candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Remember, at the end of 1 minute, I will say thank you, indicating that your time is up. Gary will turn the thing so you can see the timer. It will also border in red once your time is up. And our first question will be by Milan.
So the first question for every candidate is...
And if I, just before you go, I want to give you the order that you will respond in, and you will be responding, it'll be Eric, Jonathan, Larry, and Ibrahim.
I wonder how they work that out.
I'll remind you, but that's the order.
The City Council has spent considerable time updating the City Housing Element Plan. What further work will you do to ensure more affordable housing in the city?
Eric.
I'm first. Well, on of course, that's what the Planning Commission does. And we are under obligation to keep updating it. That's part of the housing element during the 8 years. So that will be part of what we do through the Planning Commission and through staff. I will say, we have not had a development project brought to the Planning Commission in 2 years. And if a project is not brought to the Planning Commission, there's nothing that we can do effectively to do that. So what we have to do is make it possible. We have tried to reduce all of the burdens. We've tried to remove the barriers, and at this point, what we need to do is find ways to attract the money that help with affordable housing. And there is that, and I think the city needs to get more involved on that side of things on
Thank you,
behalf
Eric.
of the development.
Jonathan?
Okay, thank you. California has a housing crisis. I don't think that can be denied. And Los Altos truly needs more affordable housing. We need housing up and down the socioeconomic strata, but affordable housing really is a critical need in the community. I am proud to report that I was one of the majority votes to pass the housing element. The housing element has plans and programs in it that are designed to promote the development of more housing, especially below market rate housing. I also voted with the council majority to approve the development at 330 Distel Circle, which is going to bring about 88 or 90 or so below market rate housing units to Los Altos. There's more that we can do. Aside from continuing to follow the plans and the policies and the housing element, the city can proactively look for people who want to develop affordable housing, and the city has the ability to work with developers, perhaps waive fees where appropriate, and bring sensible development to Los Altos with a focus on as many below market rate housing units as possible.
Larry?
Housing in 60 seconds. Let's go. So I think this is a crucial thing. I particularly want to congratulate the council for having made it this far. Getting the housing element approved was not easy, and I think that's a great progress. One of the things I've noticed is that a key thing here is a soft thing. It's not about the rules. It's about helping the public understand how important this is. Right? That we need these units because there are people that belong in our community that we want them to live here. Right? So it is about the rules and it is about the money and it all is about all those things too. But one of the things when I'm out talking to the residents, and I'll tell you what really resonates with people is school teachers. The thing that you can particularly see when people get sad about this is when they realize that they have a school teacher that they loved that has to move away because of the housing crisis. That's the sort of thing that motivates people to not view this as something they want to resent, but something they want to get behind and really support.
Thank you, Larry, for ending on time. And Ibrahim.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to commend the gentleman from Los Altos High for reading the 400-page housing element and coming up with that question. The second thing is maybe I'll tell you a story about what affordable housing actually means in Los Altos. So I drive an electric car. I'm a bit of a cheapskate, so I use the subsidized electric charging at our elementary schools. I'll usually go around 5:30 in the morning, plug in my car, and then go for a jog or a walk. You know the only other people in the parking lot at 5:30 in the morning at Covington Elementary? Teachers who commute from Gilroy, Alameda, ridiculous commutes to teach our kids for school that starts at 8:30 in the morning. That's not the kind of community I want to live in, where the infrastructure required to sustain it is just unfeasible. So that's the problem we're trying to solve, and that's what affordable housing is actually designed to address. Now, specifically, the question was, what are you going to do about it? I think the housing element is a great blueprint for what we need to do. But the next step is to actually execute on that plan. So I'm going to make sure that staff has the resources, that we actually have a plan, and that we come up with interesting and creative ways to incentivize builders to actually execute on that plan of building nearly 2,000 units in the next 8 years.
Thank you, Ibrahim. All right. All right, our next question will be Maisha.
So my question for all the candidates is, what things have you personally done to reduce your carbon footprint?
And the order will be Jonathan, Ibrahim, Eric, and Larry. So Jonathan.
I own an electric car, so big deal. A lot of people own an electric car. My electric car is a 2014 Toyota RAV4 EV. I've had this car for 10 years now. We continue to use it. I believe that when you buy a car, you ought to drive a car till it can't run anymore. So not just since it's become more widespread, the infrastructure to charge wherever you go has become a lot more common, but when it really was sort of taking a leap of faith, my wife and I decided we wanted an electric car, we wanted to do the right thing, so we bought this electric car 10 years ago, even knowing that our range was going to be a lot more limited than our gasoline car provided, and that at times it was going to be challenging to be able to charge it. Other things that we do, I think, are the same things that people in the audience are doing. We make an active effort to compost, to recycle. I'm proud that I am endorsed by the Legal Conservation Voters and Silicon Valley 350 Action Plus for my policies.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ibrahim.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, I'll answer the question directly. I do a lot of the things that have been mentioned: recycle, compost, drive an electric car, et cetera. But the reality is us doing that at an individual level is really not going to make a dent in the climate issues that we're dealing with. And so I think we need bigger and bolder vision. I actually don't think Los Altos is leading the pack at a regional level, at a Santa Clara County level, in terms of what we're doing. And I think we have an amazing climate action and adaptation plan from 2022 that we actually need to start making real progress against. And so for that vision, I've actually been endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters, Silicon Valley 350 Bay Area Action, and Vicky Moore, founder of Living Classroom. And so I'm excited about what we can do moving forward on climate change and action. But yeah, I'll take credit for driving an EV as well.
Great. Eric?
I do not own an electric car. Sorry. I had a 20-year-old Honda that just died recently. It was, I called it the Silver Bullet. It became the Gray Ghost, and then it went off to Honda heaven. And I walk, not because the car died. But not only do I go to every meeting, and I'm there at the beginning, I'm there till the end, I walk to it. And I walk home. And that's a 35-minute walk each way, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I walk every place. That's one of the things I do. I'm also the president of an HOA that has 79 homes, and we do a lot of recycling and a lot of trying to save things. So I have influence over a whole bunch of homeowners as to what they can do and what services we can provide. So we do that at home, but personally, what I do is I walk every place, which is good for me and good for the environment.
Thank you, Eric. And Larry?
Yeah, I'm also fortunate to live close by, so I walked here. I walk a lot of places too, walked here, and that definitely was a part of deciding it, and that's very fortunate. Probably the biggest thing that we've done is invest in a large solar system. Is really crucial. And it was an interesting process to go through, and one that I draw on when I think about actions that we can take as a council. Particularly because one of the things that was positive about that was with the rebates and everything else, I love the environment. I want to get rid of greenhouse gases, but the spreadsheet told me I should do it. Right? And one of the things that I think is going to be very important, particularly because, as you probably know, the Berkeley decision meant that mandates have been taken away as a tool. And to me, that means that we have to take a special care now to think about incentives. And one of the things that the city can do is streamline permit process and so forth to make it easier. It's going to be a particular issue with hot water heaters, which we can talk about another time.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Third question, Carter.
Hi, this question is for all the candidates. And what priorities would you emphasize when choosing a developer for housing on the plaza?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Didn't hear the question.
Sorry. What priorities would you emphasize when choosing a developer for housing on the plaza?
All right, and the order of response will be Larry, Eric, Ibrahim, and then Jonathan.
Yeah, I think that this is an important question, right? Because particular thing I'd note with this, and this is about the plaza in front of Safeway, there's a notice of availability put out that it can be developed as part of the housing element. I think an important part of this in particular is that we have the most negotiating leverage as a city before the sale, and that's the time to be thinking about these things. After that, it just becomes, in a sense, another project that we have to follow all the rules. I think a couple of things that are going to be particularly key there. Affordable housing, top of the list. Want to make sure that they're very committed to that and doing everything they can within the constraints of the financial reality to make that happen. Clearly being thoughtful about the parking is very important. It doesn't do us any good if we add all this housing and then throttle our merchants because there's not a good enough way to be able to get in there. And then just a sign of sort of good faith and willingness to work with the city, because things are going to come up. They always do. And so having a negotiating partner that's going to work through those things appropriately would be a key thing for me.
Thank you, Larry. Eric?
The developers, as part of the deal, if we sell the space, they will have to agree to replace the parking that disappears. That's at least the plan. And I would say that should be the very last thing that gets negotiated away if we negotiate something away. But what we need to do is the council needs to support staff, which will do the actual negotiating. They're planning to take I would call it a firm line, a hard line with developers, and they're not going to give in if they don't have to. We aren't required to sell it. We're required to negotiate the potential sale. It doesn't have, if the developer doesn't provide what we want, we do not have to say yes. Okay? And I think that's the important consideration here. We have control. As Larry said, we have control over the negotiations right now. We won't have as much control once we say yes. So we want to get as much out of them as we can now.
Thank you, Eric.
Which is the end of the sentence. I'm getting pretty good at this.
Just getting going. Yeah. All right. Ibrahim.
Yeah, look, I think it's helpful to start with why does this even matter? We have state-mandated housing quotas that we need to meet, and if we don't meet them, there will be fines, penalties, and state involvement and oversight, which we desperately want to avoid. Whatever housing gets built in Los Altos, to whatever degree, should feel organic, authentic, and native to the folks who live here, and so we want to maintain control. So the number one thing I'm going to look for is a developer who actually has a track record of a development like that, either in a neighboring city or a nearby city. Once we've found somebody who has a track record that we can rely on, the second thing is I'm going to look for a plan on how they can minimize disruption. Minimize disruption in terms of construction, in terms of parking. Are they actually thinking about how the city is going to continue to operate around those plazas for the 1-2 years that it takes? And then last, and I haven't heard this elsewhere, is we have a very engaged community. So I'm looking for a developer who is willing to engage a very thoughtful community that wants to be part of this development discussion.
Great, thank you. And Jonathan.
Thank you. So this really is a very important question, and I agree with everything that my three colleagues up here have already said. And truly, a thorough answer, a proper answer, can't be given in 1 minute. The new developments on the parking plazas downtown are going to reshape downtown for 100 years. I mean, this is a big project. It is the number 2 priority in my mind when it comes to the city, with the police station being number 1. But this is really on everyone's mind right now, first and foremost, because of the development at 330 Estelle I mentioned earlier. That is an all-affordable development, and a deal was struck with the developer to provide certain amenities to the city, to the community in terms of parking, and they backed down on that. So when we're moving forward working with a developer, on that particular project, the most important issues are as many BMR units as possible and parking, but the city needs to take responsibility for the things that really matter so that we don't get snookered the way we did at 330 Estelle.
All right. And last question in this round, Bruce.
So what unique skill set do you bring or would you bring to the City Council?
And the order will be Ibrahim, Larry, Jonathan, and Eric.
Ready?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to answer this question. So I didn't, in my opening statement, mention my work background, but what I do is actually build product for people. I build products to solve business problems. I build products for people's day-to-day stuff. Some of the products I've worked on that you may have heard of, the Kindle, if you like to read, I was one of the people who built that. I used to work at Twitter, not so proud of screwing up some elections some years ago. But the net of it is I have expertise in getting a bunch of people who maybe don't even agree or see eye to eye from different disciplines to march forward all together in alignment towards a strategic goal. So long-range strategic planning and disciplined execution to actually meet those goals is my expertise. And my opinion on how city council should run is let staff do their job of running the city and provide clear long-term strategic priorities on how to shape the city over the next couple of decades. So that's what I would bring to the table.
Thank you. Larry.
So all sorts of things, but mixing cocktails probably isn't going to come up much. So I'll leave it alone. What I'd say is that I agree that there's some things you can draw from your work background, but I do want to draw a distinction. This is not exactly like being in charge of a business. It's a different sort of pace. We have different sorts of goals. In particular, what I'd say I've learned in the Historic Commission and some of the projects there, working through some of the Orchard, which is surprisingly controversial at times, but nevertheless, what I've learned about it is it's supposed to take time. And being careful about listening attentively, listening in good faith. It's possible I can be wrong. My wife has been trying to teach me this for decades, and it's sinking in. And being able to listen carefully is something that I like to think I can bring to this sort of work.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you. I am an incumbent, and I am running on my record as an incumbent. I'm not running away from it. I believe that I have done a very good job for the residents of Los Altos, and I want to continue to do that. When I first became a member of the council, there were a lot of things that needed to be done that I didn't even realize, that these gentlemen won't realize still need to be done until they become a member of the city council. Working with my colleagues, we got our finances in order, we streamlined and made our commissions more efficient. My friend and colleague Sally Meadows said we focused on good government. Since then, we've adopted a lot of very good policies. There's the housing element. There's a climate action adaptation plan. There's the Complete Streets Master Plan. There's a lot of good things we've done, but we haven't just adopted plans and policies, we've actually implemented those plans. Earlier today, Ibrahim said you have to follow through on the housing element, and he's absolutely right. The city council has voted we have rewritten over half of our zoning code. We're doing the job, and I believe I can continue doing that, and I've proven that.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Eric?
Concision. Those who know me know that that's not true. I have a strange ability to put things together, to form patterns, to view how things are connected. And this is one of the reasons that I go to all the meetings. One of the reasons I stay is because then I learn everything there is, and I can put these things together. So I think that's and I seem to have been born that way. It's like I'm not tall enough to play basketball. It's just a curse. But I see things that way. I see patterns, and that helps me in dealing with these things at length.
All right, thank you. That ends the first round of questions. And just as a quick check-in with everybody in the audience, how's the bingo going? I know this is a new paradigm of community input, so now we're going to enter into a new phase. This is going to be a speed round. And we're going to have 8 questions that will require, believe it or not, a simple yes or no. Not on, but no. All right, so, and there is no, I don't know, I don't care, undecided.
What about it depends?
If they don't put anything up, that could be taken for any of the above. So,
Is the yes, no on the bingo?
it's on what? It's on the other side. All right, question number 1. On September 10th, 2024, there was a vote regarding the removal of 25 apricot trees behind the police station. Did you or would you have voted to allow the tree removal to continue? And that looks like all 4 yeses. Question number 2. Do you believe the city should do something more to improve cellular coverage in Los Altos? Wow. Who wrote these hardball questions? No. That's where I always lose my cell phone, is walking into Los Altos. So, do you unconditionally support a woman's right to choose with respect to reproductive health care decisions? And again, it's unanimous. All 4 are yeses. Number 4, how do you plan to vote, yes or no, on California Proposition 5 that allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure with a 55% voter approval? And again, all 4 respond yes. Number 5, do you support parklets, also known as outdoor dining, downtown? I can't see Eric down there, but all 4 are yeses. All right. Number 6, do you support exploration of the building of a park with underground parking on parking plazas 1 and 2 downtown? Again, 4 yeses. All right. This one's near and dear to my heart. Do you support the continued exploration of a downtown theater? Again, all 4 yeses. Vicky. Number 8, do you support the building of affordable housing on parking plazas 7 and 8, which would be those parking plazas bounded by Edith and State from 1st to 3rd, if that makes any sense? And again, all 4 yeses. Wow, that's great. That's the end of the speed round. So no. Well, the next questions aren't yes or no, unless you really want to do it that way. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we are now entering the second round of questions. We have 4 questions for the candidates, again from our interviewers, and the candidates will again have 1 minute to respond to each question. Remember to watch our timer in the front row, and again, the interviewers can ask a follow-up question if they choose. So, question number 5 will be from Dory.
What can the City Council do to better prepare our community for future natural disasters, both in the areas of mitigation and responses?
And the response order will be Larry, Eric, Jonathan, and Ibrahim.
Yeah, I think this is a particularly important area in terms of the communications. As I've been walking around, I have little flyers. As I knock on the doorbell, I ring the doorbell and leave people with the flyers. And what I decided to do with that was on the back of them, and if anybody wants one, I'll be happy to give you, I put a whole bunch of this stuff about resources, about emergency numbers, alert systems, websites to go for emergency preparedness. It's a never-ending task, right? Because there's a lot of things, honestly, where if somebody's not paying that much attention, and they need to catch up, it's not that big a deal. They can go and read about it. But this, when it happens, it's going to be very hard. We had a little taste of this when the power was out for several days, and Safeway became the sort of Los Altos refugee camp with people in there and so forth. I'm grateful that they had planned ahead and had the generator. But it's a thing, particularly because we have a core group of people who do the work in the volunteers, the BATs and CERTs and so forth, but we need to get more people aware and preparing, because it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
Thank you, Larry. Eric.
We are in the process of updating our safety element. That's a requirement. When you update the housing element, you then have to update the safety element. The safety element is the thing we're talking about. Number 1, go to the meetings. When they're having meetings, there was a meeting about the safety element. The mayor was there. I was there. The Resilient Los Altos people were there. None of you were there. Okay? So start going to those meetings. Take it seriously, because this is your safety and your home. The only thing that's going to save this town if something happens is if, as a group, as a community, as a village, we stick together. When the town's on fire, everybody joins the fire brigade. Okay? And we need to start thinking about that now. That's our obligation. The council needs to lead it. The council needs to inspire it. The council needs to nag us into doing it, right? And we need to support groups like Resilient Los Altos, who are actually the front line.
Thank you, Eric. Jonathan?
Thank you. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I am proud to say that I voted with the council majority to approve the construction of a brand new emergency operations center. That is going to be the brains of the city when the natural disaster finally hits, on how we can fight it and protect our property, and most importantly, our people. I am as involved as I can be in the development of the new safety element that Eric just talked about. One thing that I really wish that more people would focus on is the amount of dead trees and other foliage within the city. All of those dead plants are fuel for another wildfire. We had a dangerous wildfire several years ago. It's only a matter of time before it happens again. And all of that dead foliage is potential fuel. I think we need to do whatever we can to get rid of the dead plants, and we need to replace them, with native species, because they're going to be the most fire resistant.
Thank you, Jonathan. And lastly, Ibrahim.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of great ideas mentioned from my colleagues here. Number 1, I had a briefing with the city staff a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard they're working on a safety element. So actually seeing through a comprehensive safety element, which hasn't been updated in a while, would be number 1. Seeing through construction of an emergency response facility. To that, I would add making sure that there's somebody on city staff whose full-time or near full-time job is emergency response prep and coordination. We earlier mentioned the need for a new police department. I would add the firefighter facilities as well. I'd also add my thoughts on emergency response have actually led to the firefighters to be endorsing me, Local 1165. We heard about the Block Action Team program. I think scaling that program so that every neighborhood has coverage in case of a disaster would be great. And then lastly, the average police officer lives almost 50 miles away from Los Altos. So as we're talking about developing more housing and more affordable housing, coming up with creative ways to get at least some of them to move here so that they are available in an emergency, them, firefighters, nurses would be part of it as well.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you all for sticking to the numbers. All right, our next question, Milan.
So this is more about Los Altos High School, which is, what are your plans for congestion and safety around Los Altos High School? In particular, bicycle lanes that are counterintuitive. They've been opened and closed multiple times since I've been in these 4 years. The drop-off lane for cars that's awkward, and these both things kind of compound congestion, which I felt today, like I was right next to school and it took me 10 minutes to get to the parking lot.
And I feel your pain. I live just off of Jardin. So candidate response order will be Jonathan, Ibrahim, Larry, then Eric.
I have two children who go to Los Altos High. My son Noah, he is 16 years old. He's a junior. He's going to be embarrassed that I mentioned his name, not as much as my daughter Emma, who is a freshman this year. I'm keenly aware of the challenges that we face at Los Altos High. The reality is that the population of Los Altos High has really exploded over the past 10 or 15 years. And that has caused traffic problems because, frankly, the streets and the neighborhoods were not designed to accommodate that type of traffic during drop-off and pickup. I think that the city has done an admirable job in trying to work with the school in finding better solutions. What we have not done and what we have to do is talk to the students who are commuting, who are biking, who are walking there, and their caregivers as well, who are driving them or walking with them, doing whatever. We are not getting sufficient input from the people who are actually coming and going to the school. We're spending too much time just in our own committees and just talking to the school district. We need to have broader input.
Ibrahim.
Yeah, look, I had mentioned earlier I have this background in helping disparate groups of people work together in ways they hadn't thought possible. And I would say I've heard a lot of the frustration around commuting and parking at the high school. And my assessment is you have many different stakeholders and we're struggling to satisfy all of them at the same time. You solve one person's problem and then somebody else is upset. So just off the top of my head, you have the residents who live in the neighborhood, you've got the parents who are dropping off their kids, you have kids who commute on their own, you have the teachers and the staff of the school itself, and they all probably have slightly different needs and slightly different paces to their morning in terms of when they arrive, how they go. And it's an ever-moving problem. I'm actually on Los Altos Parents High School group. My kid goes there too. He will remain anonymous because, you know. And one of the things folks are talking about, we have a new wrinkle this year, which is kids, 2 on a bike, helmetless, looking at their phones on an electric bike, right? So I think this idea of like, there's a problem, let's fix it and move on, it's an ever-moving problem. And so I think going back to the drawing board, engaging the entire community, coming up with a solution that probably gets implemented. Okay.
Larry.
Yeah, my kids are out of high school, so I'm safe in terms of embarrassing them. I'll find other ways, though. I think it's a very important question. I think as people talked about, there's been an increase of the demand. One of the things that I really took away from it is I've been watching at the city council meetings where this topic comes up, residents who have been coming and voicing their concerns, students. We've even had better participation, in my opinion, from representatives from the school district as well, from the high school, which is a positive thing there. One of the things that I took away from that, though, was sort of a subtle thing about how to do the job, which was several of the city council members reached out to members of the community and met one-on-one with them to better understand, in a time where you're not limited by that 3-minute counter, really get to understand better. And to me, that's part of the reason why this sort of job takes a while, is it's not just the meetings. These conversations have to go on, including with the students, which I think is really key. And 2 ways, I always told my kid, you got to leave enough time. You got to leave enough time.
Thank you, Larry. And Eric?
Walk.
I live 2 miles away.
I walked to high school. This was way, way, way back in the old days. And it was about a half hour. I do half-hour walks. It was about a half hour each way, and I walked until I graduated from high school, 14 years after I started it. And that's a joke, folks. You can laugh. If I go like this, it's a joke. You can laugh. This is a problem that is sort of a geometry problem. You have only so much space, and you've got all the people trying to occupy it at the same time. Balancing that is difficult, and it requires, I agree with everything that everybody has said so far. I don't actually have to come up with an answer, because I just have to say they're right. But we need to work more with the school, and we need to get the school more involved. I think that's part of the problem, is that the city can only do so much. We can put police on the street.
Thank you, Eric.
We don't
Time's
want
up. All right. Thank you. And now we'll move on to question number 7, and that will be Carter.
Okay. So this is somewhat separated. For the incumbent, what have you not accomplished in your first term that you intend to accomplish if reelected? For the new candidates, in your opinion, what are the pressing community matters that the current council has not addressed?
And the response order will be Ibrahim, Jonathan, Eric, then Larry.
Yeah, I mean, you can read my priorities on my website, but in priority order, they are 1, making sure that we build more housing in areas where it makes sense, that are authentic to the character of the neighborhoods. 2, public safety, which is an umbrella term for the emergency response stuff we talked about, a new police station, upgrading our fire facilities, et cetera. 3 is downtown vibrancy, actually making it more walkable and accessible to all types of families, young kids, older kids, college-age kids, and then lastly, taking aggressive action on climate change. I'll just add to that, I know that's a lot to cover even in one term, and so the number 1 priority for me that I'm adamant about is actually figuring out our emergency response preparedness. That, I think, is a tangible goal for year 1.
Thank you. Jonathan.
The one thing that I really wish we had accomplished in the last 4 years, and that I absolutely want to make sure we accomplish if I'm reelected, is to secure financing for a new police station and upgrades to our 2 firehouses. Many of you know, most of you know that the basement in our police station floods. We have 911 servers down there. The HVAC in there doesn't work. There's no air conditioning. The firehouses also, I think both of them need new roofs. There's structural integrity issues. I think there's foundational issues. We've got to find a way to secure the funding in order to at least rehabilitate, but really replace the police station and fix the firehouses. Our first responders are our first line of defense. We know how important it is to have the services of our world-class police department and our world-class firefighters. We've got to give them the infrastructure that they need to do their job in order to keep us safe.
Thank you. Eric?
I think the job of the City Council is to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the people in Los Altos. For that reason, I agree with what Jonathan just said, that that is part of the solution. We need to make sure that we have proper facilities for the people who actually respond when there's a problem. But we can do more than that. This is where we start putting ideas together. There are things that we can do, and this involves both downtown and the Civic Center, that we can do to sort of reorganize some of the things that we do, and this is where we can incorporate the plazas 1 and 2 in the proposal of a park on top of a parking structure. We can do things to protect ourselves involving that. We can put small node antennas up over there so we can get our cell service. That would be a good thing. The people in Mountain View would like that, I suppose. And we can combine all of that along with getting the Emergency Operations Center and the police department. So I think that's where we need to put our attention.
Time's up. And Larry.
And away we go. All right. So certainly agree about the police station. I think that's going to become an issue that becomes ripe, and I agree wholeheartedly with us needing to take those steps and stand by that. A couple other things that jump out. One is mobile service. This is what I did for a living. I worked in mobile for the whole time. It is embarrassing to me that the city is in the middle of Silicon Valley, is Black Hole. And it's not just a convenience issue. It's a safety issue. There's a lot of people out there who have severed their landlines. I visit houses where people are like an older person with a caregiver. They have nothing but a mobile coverage. This is a real worry, and I think we owe it to people to work on that. The climate action plan, without the mandates, has to be revisited, I think, and that's something, it's not a failing of the previous council, it's just something that's changed, and we need to be on top of that. The last thing I'll say, safe routes to school is not pressing in the sense of like everybody thinking about it, but it's, I want to hear the most about is keeping the kids safe on the way to school, and that has to stay a priority every single day.
Thank you, Larry. You know, I just have to say again, Mountain View's dealing with funding for a new police and public safety building. We have a joint dispatch center, maybe, just a crazy idea. We could have a joint public safety building somewhere. I know.
At least we're on a bake sale together.
You know, crazy ideas come from crazy people. So, we've got a surprise round right now. Again, really kicking it up a notch this year. So in this round, we have just 4 questions, and our interviewers get to take a break at this period. The candidates, we're going to give you something you've always wanted, the chance to ask one of your fellow candidates a question. So each of you will get to ask one of the other members, a question. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds to formulate your question and for whom, and then we'll begin the process. And I won't announce the order until we're done.
Question, if one candidate is asked a question by another,
yes,
does that mean the next question or another, can all 4 questions be asked of one candidate, or is each candidate going to get one question?
If somebody's prescient and they plan that out in advance, yes. But so,
okay.
Excuse me. The only stipulation is that each of you gets to ask a question of a candidate. It could be of the same candidate or any candidate. So, 30 seconds. Oh, I did. My bad. We'll come back to you, Maisha. My bad. All right. We need some Don Pardo music right now. Everybody got their question yet? All right. We will go ahead and do this. Ibrahim, you get to ask the first question.
Yeah, my question will be for Mayor Weinberg, and hopefully not everybody else piles on. But my question is, as the only person here who has actually served on city council, I'm sure there are times where it feels like a really cohesive group of people all working towards the same goal, and at times it can feel like 5 people at odds with each other. What characteristics do you think would make for an ideal partner for the people who are already on council? Like, what would make for a really cohesive group of people working in the same direction?
That's a great question, and I can already say that, assuming that I am reelected, I think that any of the 3 of you, all of the 3 of you, would be fantastic council members, not just in your abilities, but in your ability, your dedication to the city, and being collegial and working together. What I would say is that patience is very important. It is really easy to do this job when everybody agrees on something. It is not so easy to do this job when there are important issues on which we do not agree, and when there are members of the public who are being very loud and often, justifiably so, because they want to be heard. Being patient, having the skill to not just listen, but to actively listen, and do not be ensconced in your views. Be flexible, be willing to understand that different people have different perspectives, and being open makes us all a better council.
Thank you, Jonathan. Larry, you get the next shot.
All right. Maybe I'll ask you a question, Ibrahim. So this is a question from an old man, and in the sense that I've kind of reaching the end of my career, retired from that. I know. I don't know how Jonathan juggles everything, but he at least has the existence proof that he can do it. And Eric and I have talking about this sort of phase of our life. So the question would be, you're in the midst of a really important career, a lot going on. You also have a young family. How are you going to juggle all that and still put in the hours to be the effective city council member? I'm sure you want to be.
Yeah, no, it's actually a very legitimate question. So I'm making eye contact with my wife, who also knows me as the most efficient man in the world. So one is, I think I'm able to carry different loads and compartmentalize and give 110% in different directions. But to more directly answer your question, Larry, I have been putting in the groundwork for 4 years now such that I can exit my 9-to-5 job and still in hopefully the prime of my life, put that energy towards civic service. So for those of you who have looked me up online, yes, I have a 9-to-5 job. I'm a vice president of product management at a company in San Francisco, but I also run a thriving 10,000 person newsletter. I teach online, I monetize that, and so I do have the optionality to create extreme work-life balance flexibility for myself so that I can not only serve on council, but also continue going door to door, holding office hours, meeting residents, and engaging with the community to the degree that it needs to be engaged with to do this job properly. So if I win, career change.
Thank you, Ibrahim. And Eric.
My question's for Larry.
Oh.
Yeah. You've just finished 8 years on the Historical Commission, and you're also involved with the History Museum, okay, which is a slightly separate institution. As you look back on it, this is a two-parter, okay, as you'll discover. As you look back on those 8 years in the Historical Commission, what gives you the warm, fuzzy feeling of accomplishment that the Historical Commission did, and what do you regret didn't happen that could have happened? As you reflect on your storied career in the Historical Commission.
Probably thanks for the question, Aaron. He has a lot of background in history, so it's a warm spot for both of us. I'd say that one of why did I even get involved with that? One of the things that's very important to me is belonging. A sense of belonging. Los Altos is a town that there's a lot of people who've lived here a long time, but there's also a lot of people, and let me be clear, many of them are not in this room tonight, who are relative newcomers to our city. They're coming here for the tech opportunities primarily, right? And so we have a question as a town, how do we get those people to feel like they belong here? Not just that they live here while they go to their job, but that they belong here. And to me, one of the key aspects of that is the history, right? Knowing that there used to be apricot orchards around, knowing that Foothill used to be a railroad station, knowing that part of the reason why the town is shaped was because there were 2 railroad stations and so forth. Helping people get to know that sort of thing. Regrets, I'd say more Mills Act supervision would have been something that we should have done more of.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. And Jonathan.
Thank you. Well, I wish I could see some of these bingo cards right now. I could really help someone out, right? Too far away, I can't read it. Eric, I will ask you a question. Okay. When you're elected to the city council, you're going to have to represent your constituents, not just on the council, but also on various county commissions and boards.
Right.
What are the county commissions and boards that most interest you, and why?
I think VTA, to begin, because if we're ever going to lick the various climate problems that we've got to get people out of their cars. And VTA is one way to get people out of their cars. I actually can take the 22, and I have occasionally done that to take it to my office because it'll go basically door to door. And that actually works rather well. Now, there are things that VTA can do, and it's wider than just Los Altos. So I think I would say VTA as the local regional agency, if you will. So, okay? Yeah.
All right.
Excuse me.
Eric.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to go back because I forgot question number 8, Bruce. So we're going to go back to question number 8, which was Maisha.
Great. And then I believe Milan has a follow-up question he'd like to get in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
After Maisha.
Okay.
Okay, so I think you all have talked a lot about, community involvement and how that's important. So my question to you would be, what is or would be your approach to ensuring that you and the council get adequate community input on major issues before making decisions? And once you have made your decisions, what will you do to develop and maintain relationships with those community members where you disagree on issues?
And the response order will be Eric, Larry, Ibrahim, and Jonathan.
Getting the word out is the hardest possible thing. And I think we need to, I'm going to sound like Ibrahim here just for a second. We need to use the technology that we have more effectively. It is the job of the council to act as a kind of megaphone and receiver. We talk about transparency, we talk about that sort of thing, and we talk about it as though we're a staff responsibility. It's a council responsibility. One of the things I've started doing little ad is coming here. And that what I would continue doing is having a Sunday afternoon Zoom call where people can just call in and ask questions and discuss things and maybe learn something. And we need to be able to do that. It's like office hours or Ask Me Anything. That would be one way to do it. So we need to look at those kinds of solutions with what's available. Time, unfortunately, as Jonathan's question pointed out.
Thank you, Eric. Time's up.
Oh, darn.
Larry.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And what's particularly interesting about this question is it's a bit of a paradox, right? Because actually things are going pretty well in Los Altos, right? Like one way you can get the community to pay way more attention is a lot of things go terribly, terribly wrong, right? That's probably not the technique we want to use, right? So I think the city's actually made a great deal of progress. We have a regular newsletter that goes out that I find quite helpful. I'm sure other people do as well. I think one of the things too that is important, it's part of the reason we had the discussion about the time involved in this position, is the time outside of the meetings, right? Is making yourself available. You know, something I've seen some of the existing council members do very effectively is that there's some, controversy at the meeting. And to the credit of existing council members, they'll reach out to those residents, not all of them because they don't want to violate Brown Act, but say, let's get together, let's get a coffee, let's talk it through. And I think that kind of local thing is really crucial to making it work better.
Thank you, Larry. Ibrahim.
Yeah, so I've been going door to door. I've been canvassing since April. And one of the amazing things about canvassing is people will just tell you. They will tell you all the problems that they're dealing with. And I've hit thousands of households in Los Altos, and I've heard from hundreds of people that they don't feel quite heard or seen. And that's hundreds too many for my taste. So I think just because we're not hearing from people doesn't mean they're fully satisfied. It just means they don't know how to sort of get their voice across. And I think the fact that there are so many community organization groups in Los Altos that run their own newsletters and their own channels tells you that there is a need for more frequent, more diversity of communication, different channels. And so I think all of these ideas need to be brought to bear. I think the current council does a good job of holding office hours. Let's do more office hours more frequently at places where people actually are, like the farmer's market, right? Let's create a ticketing system where people can just go to a website and say, hey, my fire hydrant is leaking or my tree is down, and there's a queue that people can look at. Idea that I actually got from Larry. We don't have an ombudsman who actually answers the hotline.
Time's up. And Jonathan.
Really, there is no bigger key to being an effective council member than to listen to and reach out to your constituents to find out what they are thinking. Sometimes the city does this very well. We've had a lot of public outreach when it came to updating our housing element. We've had a lot of public outreach on the question of whether Los Altos will go into districts, and that's important. But what I want to make sure that everyone in this room knows, and please go forth and spread the word, everyone who is on council right now, and my three colleagues who are up here right now, when they're on the council, we want to hear from you, and we are accessible. You can go to the city's website and you can find our emails, you can find our phone numbers. Every one of us will respond if you have something to say. We need to do a better job in going out to the community and soliciting input, and I strongly encourage the high school community to do that. But we're there and we want to hear from you because your opinions are critical.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Milan, you said you had a follow-up question.
So my follow-up, I know we already asked in the yes/no round, and it was mentioned, I think, by Larry. But for cellular connection and data and all that, which is very spotty here, what you guys all said yes, that you would support improving it, but do you have any ideas of how you would support expanding cellular data?
Okay. This was supposed to be to an individual, so 15 seconds per answer. Or were you directing that to Jonathan? Or
no, this was a general question.
Okay, so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity, but you only get a 15-second shout out. Jonathan, you had your hand up first.
In my introduction, I said that we had to get the city extricated from some lawsuits. There was one lawsuit that cellular companies were forced to file against the city. The city took an illegal action in denying coverage. We have since settled that case. We have passed a new cellular ordinance, and you are actually seeing mobile spots coming up in the city.
Okay. Ibrahim.
+1 to what Jonathan said, and I'll double down and say we should introduce public Wi-Fi, which is in the Downtown Vision Plan from 2018.
Eric?
Ditto.
Larry?
Yeah, it was really crucial to end that lawsuit. Bill Barr, if you've heard of him, was one of the counsel for Verizon, to give you who idea we're with. A good thing, there's a lot of smaller technology. I'd say that it's much smaller. A lot of this can happen without people even seeing it, which is something that's a misunderstanding, and we can make a lot of difference with that.
All right. Okay. Now, we've already done the surprise round. That was fun. And we will now move to the third round of questions. And again, we have 4 more questions, and I can count to 4, so I'll make sure we do that. And we will start question number 9 with Dory.
As more and more people walk and ride their bicycles in the early morning and late at night, street safety is again a focus of the community. In particular, as it applies to street lighting in the residential area behind LHS and Egan, what are specific plans for improving safety for pedestrians and cyclists, especially late at night?
And the order will be Larry, Jonathan, Ibrahim, and then Eric.
Yeah, this is a good question. Actually, something I was just talking about somebody about this yesterday over by Block. It was the particular neighborhood. One of the things I think is important here is we need more lighting. We do need more lighting. We definitely do. The good news, though, is that there's been a lot of advance in the technology of this stuff. When people say, oh, we need more lighting, and they're worried that we're going to turn the city into some sort of prison yard or something, we don't need to do that. You can use very directed lighting in the paths where people are going to keep people safer, and I think that's really key. I'll mention one other thing that keeps coming up, though, is not just the lighting, it's e-bikes. E-bikes have really changed the dynamic of the flow of traffic. There's sort of this new thing that people don't know how to deal with. As a council member, I would definitely want to put that on the agenda and see what we can do to particularly address the new challenges that e-bikes are bringing to the mix.
Thank you, Larry. Jonathan?
Thank you for the question. This is something that I actually had not given much thought to. And the first thing that went through my mind when the question was asked is, we're looking right now at considering a dark skies ordinance. And I'm in support of the dark skies ordinance, the philosophy behind it, but that's going to make the city even more dark. How are we going to balance the need for the environmental responsibility we have to make sure that we are responsible in the light that we are emitting, but also making sure that people are safe? Cyclists who are riding, pedestrians who are walking at night. I don't know the answer to that yet. I have not thought it all the way through. I do thank you very much for bringing up the question because you've given me a new line of thought. And I would emphasize when you think of these things, give me a call, send me an email. These are the things that I want to hear. I know that my colleagues would want to hear this. Maybe they've already been thinking about it, but there's a real tension that's going to come, and I need to give it a lot of thought.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ibrahim?
Yeah, I'd offer 2 quick thoughts. The first is, anytime we're faced with a challenge, I always like to ask, are we the first city in the history of humanity to face this challenge? Probably not. In fact, there's a city not too far down the road, Saratoga, that is of a similar rural characteristic that probably has similar problems. So one of the things I like to do is go talk to neighboring cities and neighboring councils about how did you tackle this problem? What was resident reaction? What worked? What didn't work? So that's number 1 is I try to learn from our neighbors. Number 2 is, and the kids might throw things at me, is I think some education is required for our middle schoolers and high schoolers on safety. I know some of those videos just go over their head, but when I go for a walk at night, my wife is always like, turn on your flashlight on your iPhone so people can see you. And after 10 years of her telling me this, now I do it, right? And so I think part of it is education and getting through to people of hey, we live in a pretty dark city. You got to make sure you're wearing reflective clothing or have headlights or whatnot, right?
Thank you, Ibrahim. And Eric?
As somebody who does a lot of walking at night as well as during the day, and who is, I'm sorry to say, getting older, I'm fully in favor of sidewalks and streetlights. I don't really worry about the rest of it. I want streetlights and sidewalks. That's it.
Thank you. Question number 10, that will be Maisha.
So council has done a good job resolving some long-standing issues like lawsuits, but a few issues have dragged on for years. What specifically will you do to resolve the following 3 issues? The Grant Park Community Center renovation, police and fire station issues, and Halsey House.
And the response order will be Eric, Ibrahim, Jonathan, and then Larry.
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of her question.
The last one, or the 3 issues are the Grant Park Community Center renovation, police and fire station issues, and Halsey House.
Halsey House.
Halsey House.
It's the
Eric?
police station, the Grant Park, and Halsey House, for those who weren't able to hear. Okay. Well, there's no answer on Halsey House. You can tear it down or you can fix it up, and they're both going to cost money, and then we're going to have to decide what we want to do with that property once that's done. A lot of questions remain to be answered, and first thing I would do is try to figure out what we can do to answer those questions. The policy is relatively easy after that, okay? With respect to the Grant Park, let's fix it. Okay? I mean, so let's this is not an insuperable problem. Let's fix it. It's used by a lot of people who like it. Let's do what we can with it. And then the third one was, I've forgotten already.
It's in fire station.
Fire station. Well, and we've already addressed that to a certain extent. I think that there is consensus among us, if not anybody else, that we need to do this and we need to fix it up. So that's already, we're working on that. But I think that Grant Park and Halsey House, we need to figure out what we want to do.
Thank you, Eric.
Grant Park, we need to fix.
All right, Ibrahim.
Yeah, the first one, I want to sort of maybe give a little background on why Grant Park is even a contentious issue. I've been canvassing all over town, and when I go to South Los Altos, by the way, I don't think of it as North Los Altos and South Los Altos, but when I'm in South part of Los Altos, I'm reminded that it's South Los Altos, because people ask me, where are you from? And I start telling them my long history, and they're like, I mean, which part of Los Altos? So it's a thing. So the folks who live in that neighborhood, they really feel like that community center is neglected, that we've got the cool stuff up here, and they don't have the nice amenities. And so I think from a perception perspective, from a quality of life perspective, it matters. So the short answer is we should prioritize the renovations required and get them done. On the police department and firefighter station, the police department, look, it's a execution plan in terms of how are we going to finance it and pull the budget together. On the fire stations, I'm actually of the opinion that we should consider incorporating ourselves into a fire district like some of our other neighboring cities have done to give ourselves better quality of service and response time. And then lastly, on Halsey House, I'll agree with what Eric said, which is let's do a study to figure out what our options are and then pick one based on community engagement.
Jonathan?
Thank you. Grant Park, it's actually almost done. We have had the equipment to finalize the improvements at Grant Park for some time. Believe it or not, the holdup has been everybody's favorite utility, PG&E. There is a very large, powerful electrical panel that needs to be installed. Once it is installed, air conditioning, hot water, everything that Grant Park sorely needs and deserves to have, that our residents should have been having all along, will finally be available. I think that installation is going to happen within the next month or two, hopefully even quicker than that. I talk to the city manager about it all the time. This is one of the things that is first and foremost, and it is driving staff and the council batty. I've talked about the police and the fire station with respect to Halsey House. The city council has asked that an environmental impact report be done. I believe that report is going to come before the next council, probably early on in January or February, and then we'll be able to get serious about discussions of what we're going to do.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Larry.
Yeah, the Grant Park is symbolic as well as a thing. It becomes a thing, and it is frustrating. I've been trying to spread the word that the PG&E issue has been the gating item in making progress there, and I think it's important. I think it is a reminder, though, when we hear about that from residents, to be thinking holistically of the city. To me, it's particularly a worry with the looming possibility of switching to districts. One of the things that you're hearing from all of us is that since we're all running at large, we're all scurrying around all over the city trying to listen to everybody. And we need to make sure that we got to follow state law, but when we go to districting, we continue to do that. And Grant Park, I think, is symbolic of that. Very strongly in favor of redoing the police station. We won't talk too much about that. Halsey House, big issue for the historic people. Here's what I'd say about that. Is historic preservation for just sort of its own sake is not really sensible. The thing that we need to study when this report comes back is what sort of programmatic benefits are coming out of it? What can we do, if anything, with it that is useful to the community, doesn't disrupt the neighbors, because there's not a lot of parking there. It's a long topic.
All right. Question number 11. Bruce.
What are your views on the role and depth of the council's relationship with city staff? What is the micromanaging and what is allowing staff to, in essence, make major decisions? And I guess I would put it this way. The way things are constituted right now, is the council leading staff or is staff leading the council?
And the order will be Jonathan, Eric, Larry, Ibrahim.
Council leads the staff. The way it works, for people who don't already know, is that the city council establishes policy and the city staff implements that policy. We have about 135 or so employees in the city, fluctuates seasonally. But there is no question that the city staff's job is to make sure that the policies that the council sets forth are what happens in the city. It doesn't work if the city council tries to micromanage. We hire professionals. We have to let professionals do their job. It is not appropriate for a council member to talk to anyone on the city staff other than the city manager, unless they're also keeping the city manager in the loop. Now, that means that we're going to hold the city manager accountable and make sure that staff is doing the things we need them to do. And we need to have good communication so that our priorities are clear. We know what staff's capabilities are, but it is absolutely the council's responsibility, and I think that the council does lead the staff, not the other way around.
Thank you, Jonathan. Eric?
I have to agree entirely with what Jonathan just said. The council has to come up with the policies, but it also has to be clear as to what those policies are. And I think one of the things that we have to be careful of is that when we give direction to staff, they actually understand the direction we want them to go in. So that means, I'm an old teacher. I learned a long time ago that if you don't say something, it didn't get said, and it has to have been said. So I think we need to be careful about that. Communication is key. The staff is professional, they know their jobs, they will do their jobs, and we need to let them do it. But we need to let them do it according to the way that the council wants it done. Right, so it's a dance. It's not one leading the other. It's a more informal, modern-style dance, right? It's not a waltz. The gentleman doesn't lead necessarily. So I think, isn't that the way it works? Yes.
Thank you, Eric. Larry?
Okay, dancing lessons after the discussion. I, of course, agree with this governance. This is, of course, the basic governance structure that we have. Let me say a little bit more about the priorities. Which is, we've dealt with this a lot in our business lives, and I've had to deal with this. And here's one of the things I learned about communicating priorities. You haven't done a good job if the people you're trying to communicate don't know what they can not do, right? Because otherwise what tends to happen with priorities is it's like, that bag where you're going on a big trip and you keep thinking to yourself, oh, there's always room for one more thing. There's always room for one more thing. And there's that danger that we give staff too many priorities to the point where they don't know which of those priorities is actually the key one. And if that's what you do, you actually hand it back to them. They have to, put them in a hat, pick them out. The key to good prioritization is that the people you're communicating with know what they should not be doing as much of, so that they free up the time to things that you want them to do.
Thank you, Larry. And Ibrahim?
Yeah, look, when I first considered running, one of the first people I talked to was our current city manager, Gabe. I went and sat down with him, and he told me from the get, he said, look, the council sets the strategic priorities and the staff executes them. If we have clear priorities, we can execute on anything. And so I'll just reiterate, I think that is a model that makes sense. I think that is a model that people are accustomed to. I would just add, I think sometimes priorities can become quite large. And so I think stack ranking or providing guardrails for folks is helpful. I don't think it's constructive when you give staff directions like, hey, we should just be NOx-free by the year 2027. There's a lot of different ways you might get to that end state, right? So I think providing some guidance on here's the things that are non-negotiable, here are the things that we're willing to give on, I think is helpful, right? So just as an example, hey, we need to build 1,948 units in the next 8 years. That is a strategic goal, but there's many, many ways to get to that goal. So I think providing more guardrails and guidance is key, and I think transparency on the part of both council and staff is also important.
Thank you, Ibrahim. All right, question 12, Milan.
Approximately 4 years ago, Los Altos put in place police reform objectives. Where do we stand on achieving those objectives, and what were the things that we learned, especially with newer trends and technologies like e-bikes?
And the order is...
I'm sorry, could we have the question repeated again?
Yeah, please.
About 4 years ago, Los Altos put in place some police reform objectives. Where do we stand on achieving those objectives, and what did we learn, especially learnings that can apply to new trends and technologies such as e-bikes?
And the order will be Larry, Ibrahim, Eric, and then Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll be upfront with you. I don't know right now what I haven't seen the report on the objective. I do know that we have made some progress on it. I know that with the automated license plate reading in particular, that was a place that I followed carefully because I was concerned about the civil liberty implications of that. Right, there's a sort of big brother aspect of that. That's a concern. You know, the other part is the softer part, right, which is spoken with residents of color who are stopped more often, right, and keeping track of that kind of thing is really crucial. I'm actually going for a ride along next week with the police to spend some time getting to know them, and that way, because I think that's as important as the reports is to spend a couple hours in the police car getting to know them, and that's what I'll be doing next week.
Thank you, Larry. Ibrahim?
Yeah, I'll also confess, I don't know that I've seen the report you're referencing. I have seen certain citizens advocacy groups like Los Altos for Racial Equity have their own list of police reform ideas, so I don't know if that's what we're talking about, but some of the things I've heard under consideration are the deployment of ALPRs, military equipment use, and reporting around traffic stops and other sort of citations that the police issue. And so on this, I'd say, I've actually toured the police station. I've met with the outgoing police chief, Angela Avert, a couple of times. And my sense is providing more forums for residents to directly communicate with the police department leadership on what is and isn't happening, and also them getting the opportunity to ask for the resources to do the kind of reporting that people want is important. One of the things I learned from Chief Avert is no issue reporting our, stoppages, but we actually need an analyst on staff to actually do that, right? And so that's what I would say is anytime we're trying to hold people accountable, have we actually given them the resources to do so?
Thank you, Ibrahim. Eric?
If we don't know what's going on, it's perhaps a sign that things are working. That is to say, if there were problems, it would be brought up. And I have to say, I'm not aware that there have been any particular problems, certainly none that have been brought up to the council. Okay? So in that sense, perhaps no news is good news. Now, as to, and I'm sure Jonathan will actually give us some news because he may know something, but this is not something that has come to the council in a public way. And I don't know anything. I'm like Larry. I don't know exactly what has been happening, except that nothing has been happening, and maybe, I'm hopeful, maybe that's good news.
Thank you, and Jonathan.
Okay. I have a different take on this question than my three colleagues. I understood the question to be about the reforms that were proposed and where we are on those reforms. 4 years ago, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, there were a series of community meetings about how Los Altos polices itself and what improvements could be made for the community. There were a lot of hard conversations that were had at those meetings. And even though it doesn't get a lot of attention, there have been a lot of unfortunate incidents. I'm going to run out of time, but I will say two of the results of those meetings were to suggest that Los Altos High no longer have an SRO, a school resource officer. That reform was implemented. I support that. I have heard people say, let's bring it back. I don't support bringing it back. And we also have an ombudsman who will allow you to make an anonymous tip if you think that the police have injured your rights.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right. That ends the third round of questions. And believe it or not, we are 1 minute ahead of schedule. So
some of us talk.
We now have closing statements, and we are going to hear closing statements from each of the candidates. You will each have 1 minute for your closing. We're going to go in reverse order from where we started, so it will be Jonathan, Eric, Larry, and Ibrahim. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I thought we had a minute. Again, I would like to thank LACC for putting on the forum today. I know it was a lot of work. Thank you, Mike, for your work. And of course, thank you very much to our reporters for asking their questions. I think the lesson that all of us have learned tonight is that the voters of Los Altos have 5 very qualified candidates, and that's a wonderful position to be in. I believe that I stand out from the rest, not just because of my experience, but because I have a proven record of protecting the taxpayers' money while bringing about positive changes for the community. If reelected, my top 3 priorities are securing funding for a new police station, bringing much-needed improvements to our parks and libraries, and to ensure that our children and their caregivers have safe routes to school. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Supervisor Joe Simidian, the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, League of Conservation Voters, and I am distinguished as a gun sense candidate by Moms Against Guns in Action, and I am endorsed by 11 former mayors of Los Altos. I respectfully and humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Eric?
Again, thank you. I echo what Jonathan said, and thanks to everybody here, the organizers, and thanks particularly to you who've stuck with us through this period and have listened very attentively, and apparently nobody won the bingo. Right? Yeah, right.
Seriously? Seriously, bingo? All right.
Okay.
I was just going to say we're going to have them each do their favorite buzzword to see if we got anywhere. So we'll start over, or you stopped it. Great. So when the show is over, if you will come up, we'll get a picture of you and the candidates. All right. All right. Pick it up.
I do have a question
Eric?
as to whether passion. I used the word passion at the early on, and I thought, oops, there's a buzzword. I don't know if anybody had that. I said my passion was, and I don't speak that way normally, but there's something about the assembly here that encouraged it. I think I have said what I had to say. And therefore, before I put my foot in my mouth, I'm going to stop. Thank you very much for all of you. I look forward to speaking with some of you and meeting you, and I hope that you will consider me when you are voting.
Thank you, Eric. Larry?
Well, let me also emphasize the thanks to our editors for asking the good questions. That's really great to see. And thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you for everybody on Zoom. And also a particular thank you to the people who don't turn their dogs or hose on me when I ring your doorbell. It's just, I'm sure all of us agree that it's a real treat to go out and meet folks out there. I'll invite you to check out my website, losaltoslarry.org. For a list of my priorities in more detail, more about my biography if you're interested in that, and also endorsements, a number of there that you can check there. Particularly proud to be endorsed by 11 former mayors. And one other one, we only got a yes-no, but I think it deserves more than a yes-no. I'm very proud to have been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. We don't have a clinic in town, but what I know is that people have come from 36 other states to receive care here since the changes. I'm very proud of that. And I will do what I can to make sure those people know that they are safe and they are welcome.
Thank you, Larry. And Ibrahim.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to thank everybody. I mean, I expected nothing but amazing answers from my colleagues up here. We got that. Thank you to all of you for actually turning up. When I see folks engaging in our civic process, it gives me hope for the future. It's amazing to see our high school kids and Bruce sort of asking these interesting questions. And thank you to the folks who actually organized this forum and helped put it on. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The second thing I would like to say is, like I said in my opening statement, I just think this is the cutest, most charming town that I've ever been a part of. And I want to grow old here. I want my kids to grow old here. And I think that requires making some decisions that are overdue. And so I think having somebody like me who has a history of strategic planning and disciplined execution, not only in the private sector with business and tech, but also solving smaller scale problems on the Library Commission is what the City Council needs. And don't just take my word for it. We've got everybody from former Mayor Jean Mordeau, who was a leading force in building this community center, to Planned Parenthood, to the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, to leading environmental groups endorsing me. So I hope you'll vote for me on Election Day.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Wow. Thank you, everybody. You were a fabulous audience. You played by the rules. And what was the word that took you over the top on bingo? Okay, so if you want to come on up now, before everybody starts to scatter, but we have a couple of slides we do need to go through. And I first want to thank all of the volunteers that were here passing out the bingo cards. And I actually want to take the moderator's prerogative and thank the 4 people I know of that really were working on this, and might be 3, Kim Cranston, Robin Abrams, and Joe Benenato. So they are... I didn't do anything, I'm just the hired gun. So, we have, want to thank all of our editors that are here on the screen. They did a fantastic job. Let's give them a round of applause. Of course, we have to thank our sponsors, and we all know them, we all love them, and let's keep doing business with them. Thank the candidates. They did a fabulous job this evening, stuck within their time limits, and Los Altos, in my humble opinion, would be well served by any of you. So, congratulations. Congratulations, Los Altos. And let's see, Election Day is November 5th. Ballots start coming out about the first week of October. I don't have that date here. Don't forget to vote. Oh, I guess it's all up there. There you go. And don't forget, every vote counts. We saw that in the primaries, and tell all your friends. It does make a difference. So, good night, everybody. And if the bingo winners would come on up, we'll get a picture. Keep all of you guys here. Do we want to get, hey, Kim, do we want to get the editors in here too? If all the editors could come over here with the candidates.